Well, this is the first bonus podcast, we could say. We'll see how long it is, but it's not in our Genesis series because we're not really talking about Genesis specifically. But we're continuing because I really want to focus on this Melchizedek character.
Yeah.
Because one, it's just an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
But also, it has some really, really important implications for him ultimately being compared to Jesus.
Yeah.
And so we see this happen in the book of Hebrews, but it plays off a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, which is Melchizedek in the Psalms, and specifically Psalm 110. And so this is the second time he shows up. He's in the book of Genesis, and then he doesn't show up at all for the rest of the Genesis, the rest of the Torah, the rest of the Judges or the Kings or anything else. Doesn't show up at all until a poem.
And the poem author is unknown.
Yeah, the poem actually, no, it's a Psalm of David.
It is. Oh.
So we inquired on
Great. Yeah.
on whether or not it was David a little bit in the first episode,
Yeah.
in the last episode.
Yeah.
But you can see in the header here that's a Psalm of David.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so we're seeing that David, he's essentially talking about this future Messianic king.
Yeah.
This is the most quoted psalm in the entire New Testament. It shows up a bunch of times, more than any other psalm. Because the New Testament, right? It's about Jesus.
Yeah.
And this psalm is ultimately alluding to Jesus and his role as a Messianic king.
Wow.
And also sort of a priest king, but we'll get into that, which is the description that we get from Melchizedek.
It just seems already, we haven't even started reading, but it seems so rich thinking this is literally Jesus's descendants or ancestors. David.
Yeah.
It's the same bloodline.
Same
family line.
Totally.
And also just hearing how David is reflecting upon another king. Like kings, it's almost like king's notes on another king from past.
But he's talking about okay, I'm a king, but I'm talking about some future king who's going to be better than I am.
Yeah. And better than this guy in the past.
And yeah, better than this guy Melchizedek. And you're like, yeah, it's
like a king sandwich.
with king, and then king, like 3 pieces of bread.
Triple decker.
Yeah, a king Big Mac. So,
really I just think that's so cool though.
Yeah,
it's because David wasn't a priest either.
No.
Yeah. He wrote some really good poetry.
Yeah,
and songs. So,
totally. So let's get right into it. Psalm 110.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to read verses 1 through 3?
Yeah, sure.
Great.
Absolutely. 1 through 3. The Lord says to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. The Lord sends forth from Zion your mighty scepter. Rule in the midst of your enemies. Your people will offer themselves freely on the day of your power in holy garments from the womb of the morning. The dew of your youth will be yours.
So this is kind of elevating that David, he's talking about this person who's going to sit at my right hand. Right? This is the Lord saying this person, this future Messianic king is going to sit at the right hand of God. And so he's not just going to be just some random spiritual being, but that he actually has some sort of royal figureship in some way.
Yeah. And this may be totally general to say, but the Lord, again, here is pertaining directly to Yahweh.
Yes. Yeah. So when you see the capital L, that's when you know, because they'll use the term Lord with a lowercase l. I did this for a lowercase l, just a line. But they'll use the lowercase l as like a term for like a master. So we see this like in the book of Ruth, where Ruth refers to Boaz as Lord, but with a lowercase l. Yeah. And so it's not like she's calling him Yahweh. Yeah. It's not happening. Yeah. But we see that with the lowercase and uppercase, it makes quite the difference.
Yeah. And if you don't want a biblical example, you could use like Lord Farquaad. from Shrek.
Yes, you could. I did not think Shrek would make his way into the podcast today, but it always happens, right? So,
wait, does that happen a lot?
No, I don't think. Maybe I feel like.
Oh no, I've brought up onions before in the past.
Yeah, you did do an onion thing.
Oh,
so this is your second Shrek quote, which part of me wants to say it's too many.
Probably,
but also part of me wants to say it's not enough. Not saying that I'm inviting you to make more Shrek quotes.
I think
please don't. It needs to come up naturally. But I will say that I did not think Shrek would find his way into a biblical theology podcast.
So Lord, this is
what you get when you get two 20-somethings together. You know, who grew up on Shrek. So
good times. I'm making waffles.
Yeah. So, oh man. So 1 through 3.
Yeah.
In essence, it's talking about this future messianic king. You know, and we can sit here for a long time and go through everything.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
A whole book, one might say.
Oh, yeah.
A library of books.
But really, it's harping on that reality that this future messianic savior is going to be a king. That's the first thing we got to think about. So, verse 4.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Just 4?
Just 4, yeah.
The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek.
So, Melchizedek, this is the second time. This is 2 of 2. So 1 of 2 is in Genesis.
Crazy.
And the only other time this name shows up is one time in this psalm right here.
Wow.
In the entire Hebrew Bible. Wow. And it just says, in the order of Melchizedek. Like, it's almost just like it was just kind of put in there at the end. But it says, you are a priest forever. So not only is this messianic king going to be at the right hand, going to be a king, but it's also going to be a priest. So a king and a priest. And this is in the order of Melchizedek because who else was a king and a priest? Melchizedek, right? And when we see the Levitical priesthood, all those priests were not kings.
No.
They were not kings. And so ultimately, this means that this future messianic king is not going to be through the same system that we had through the Mosaic law, that they're actually going to be a little different. So much so that they're going to be through the order of Melchizedek. Yeah. Right? And so in the same way that Melchizedek was a priest and a king who came to bless Abraham, that this future messianic king will be a priest and a king that will come to bless God's people. So super dense. They're bringing up this super cool reality of who this future person will be. Yeah. Right. And this is harped on in the New Testament all the time. And we'll see specifically as we talk about this in Melchizedek in the book of Hebrews. Yeah. That especially in this book, they even bring up some lines from Psalm 110.
Really?
To talk about how Jesus and Melchizedek are similar. Wow. So yeah, super, super cool.
Stick around. That'll be fun to listen to too.
Yeah. So, okay. So then the last part, this is kind of like a micro episode, you know?
Yeah.
Verse 5 through 7.
The Lord is at your right hand. He will shatter kings on the day of his wrath. He will execute judgment among the nations, filling them with corpses. He will scatter chiefs. Also, could be heads. Chiefs or heads over the wide earth. He will drink from the brook by the way. Therefore, he will lift up his head.
So, yeah, this kind of brings up that this future Messianic king will be some sort of deliverer, right? Because he's delivering them from their enemies. This was a huge thing, and that the Psalms harp on all the time is the sort of battle aspect of Yahweh. Yeah. Right, that Yahweh is a deliverer from their enemies.
Which the Jewish people really got behind.
Right, because, I mean, for us now, we're like, oh, God, and like God promotes war. Like, why would I want God to promote war? Yeah. But back then, you're like, okay, well, they were either in exile, they were either taken over by their enemies and in exile, or they were scared of being in exile. Yeah.
or in process of,
or in the process of going into exile,
yeah.
or coming out of exile.
Yeah.
So they're always in this process of having really harsh interactions with their enemies.
Yeah.
And so of course they're going to want to think about Yahweh as a deliverer from their enemies.
Yeah. They would almost want that from a
Exactly.
fallen human standpoint.
Exactly. And so for us in America, as we're thinking about Yahweh as, we focus more on the therapeutic side of Yahweh, which is good.
Yeah.
But there's also this other more wrathful side of Yahweh.
Yeah.
Where the Israelites were really focused on that.
Yeah, and those don't have to be in opposition of each other.
Exactly. Yeah, and it doesn't mean that they never focus on the more therapeutic side of Yahweh.
Yeah.
But it does mean that they set up an importance about Yahweh being this way, because it was very important. And so something that for us, maybe I wouldn't call upon Yahweh to be a deliverer of my enemies right now. Maybe I could take that more metaphorically, because we don't really have enemies in America that are like knocking at our door right now trying to kill us and take us out and
we don't
bring us into slavery.
Yeah, Pharaoh's not running after us in his horse chariots going through the Red Sea.
Right, so we don't have that.
Yeah.
And so it's just a different context.
Yeah.
And so when we see that in the book of Psalms, we really need to remember that reality. We got to, put on our Hebrew sandals, or as we say on the podcast, there are Hebrew Crocs, just because we want to be interesting and weird. Put on our Hebrew sandals, put on the shoes of a Hebrew, and kind of think like a Hebrew would think.
Force yourself into that history.
Yeah, right? And think like, okay, if I am scared of my enemies constantly because I'm surrounded by them, we're kind of a weak, small nation, and all we have to trust is Yahweh, I'm going to call on Yahweh to protect me from my enemies. Yeah. And that's just a natural thing to do, and that's a good focus to have, that Yahweh is a protector.
Yeah. And that's an immutable thing about Yahweh as well.
Yeah, totally. And so that's just one of those little things that we just need to
be okay with.
Just be okay with and click into that reality, and know that even though this might not be as applicable as we could possibly see it now in our current context, that this is something that was uber practical and super specific, and something that they really, really focused on because that was their reality. So that's one of the ways that we need to remember. This is an ancient text for an ancient people, and this was not written with the idea that David is talking about America.
What?
Right, yeah.
I thought he was like prophesying like 50 states.
Right, that we need to remember that not everything is about America, which is kind of hard to think about, as an American.
We're so cool.
Not everything is about America, but this is actually an ancient text for an ancient people. Yeah.
It's okay to just read something.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that we are not ultimately a part of that story.
And we can learn from it too.
Yeah. So just because it wasn't written specifically for us in our context, that doesn't mean that we don't have nothing to do with it. It doesn't mean we can just throw it away. It's not at all what the biblical authors want us to do. They want us to sit with it, meditate on it, and really think about the implications of what the authors are trying to say. Yeah. So we see this deliverer, right? Specifically, and this was you mentioned, there's a footnote for the sort of middle of verse 6. It says, he will shatter chiefs. Or it says, there's a footnote that says, instead of chiefs, or the head.
And again, we're not talking about America. He's not talking about Native Americans.
Yeah, right.
Come on, guys.
But
chiefs.
It says, this future messianic king will shatter the head of its enemies.
That should set off a red flag.
That should click something for you, right?
Yeah.
That should totally get the gears turning and think like, whoa.
Genesis 3.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
You think back to Genesis 3, and what is the Messianic king going to be? It's going to be the snake crusher, right? The one who comes and crushes the head of the snake.
He will bite his heel and he will crush his head.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And so that's something that they're tapping into. This is totally a callback.
Way to go, King David.
Yeah, way to go. He had his Hebrew Bible on lockdown. Yeah. And so, we see that this future Messianic king will be a king, will be a priest, and will be the snake crusher. And these are the things that the psalm really focuses on. And this is what the New Testament focuses on, is that Jesus is king. Jesus is king of the Jews. And Jesus is also the priest. He's also the permanent, everlasting priest forever.
Yeah.
And he is also the snake crusher.
Oh, yeah.
Well, from this, I mean, we see that he's also
yeah.
has a prophet figure, and
Yeah.
But he's also the snake crusher,
yeah.
right? That he's also the one who comes and tramples the snake under his foot.
Yeah.
And so that's really what we can kind of get out of this psalm, that David is using Melchizedek to create a framework for what this future Messianic king will be like.
So cool.
Yeah, and it's interesting that he talks about Melchizedek and he doesn't bring up anyone else. The people who are talked about all the time before, like Moses or Abraham.
Yeah.
No, he brings up Melchizedek. And that's ultimately the one that he focuses on, and it just has all kinds of implications for how we should view Melchizedek, right? Yeah. That he's not just a random person that shows up and leaves, but he was intentionally kept a little mysterious. And then David takes sort of the character of Melchizedek, but more of the structure and the metaphor of who Melchizedek was, extracts that and puts that onto who the future Messianic king will be.
Man.
So
this is like a deep cut with David.
Dude, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's essentially Psalm 110.
So cool. Second 2 out of 2. Melchizedek. He's done his cameo appearances in the Old Testament.
In the Old Testament, yeah. And so then he shows up in one chunk of passages in the book of Hebrews.
Yeah.
And so we'll get to that next. But that's our little mini episode that ended up being 15-ish minutes, maybe.
Yeah, probably. Right around there.
Yeah. Thank you for listening.
This has been Narratology Bonus Hour. 15 minutes.
Quarter hour.
Yeah.
And so, feel free to share this with your friends. Stay tuned in on what we're doing. If you didn't listen to the previous episode, I would highly encourage you. Probably would have been good to listen to it before, but, we're here.
Yeah. And if you're feeling a little bit more high class and you don't just want to listen to it, if you want to watch us, we're on YouTube too.
Yeah, we are. So, feel free to listen to the previous one, and then stay tuned in for the episode of Melchizedek in the book of Hebrews.
Mm-hmm. So, see you next time, guys.
There you go.